today for this webinar on raising ADHD kids in a digital world. How do we set safe and supportive boundaries for kids with attention and executive function challenges? This will be presented by Michael Borowiak and Mathew Meyers, co-owners of Traverse Counseling and Consulting. Before we get started, I would like to introduce myself and share about upcoming events and opportunities for families to engage with Groves. Then I'll review a few housekeeping items and introduce our presenters. My name is Linda Roslansky, and I'm the Director of Outreach here at Groves Learning Organization, also known as GLOW. I have the great pleasure of working alongside our Learning Center and admissions teams. We have many events to engage with GLOW and explore our Academy and Learning Center. We have some admissions events coming up, including an open house for our Academy next week on May 7th, where you can see our newly renovated school. Parent Coffee will be on May 15th at Ridgedale Library. And to register for our summer programs is open still until May 30th. To access information about all these upcoming events and to register, please visit our website. So to help stay on schedule, your camera and microphone have been turned off. Our speakers will take questions at the end of the presentation. Please use the chat function to submit those questions, and you will notice the conversation chat bubbles at the top of your screen. You can click those to enter the questions. I will moderate those to help us stay on track at the end of the presentation. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce our expert presenters. They are amazing clinicians, phenomenal resources to schools and families, and overall wonderful human beings. Michael and Mathew are co-owners of Traverse Counseling and Consulting. Michael has a master's of social work and is a licensed independent clinical social worker. He is trained in family systems therapy, chemical dependency, discernment counseling, and child and adolescent therapy with an undergraduate degree in psychology. Mathew is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and he is passionate about relationships and has a desire to help couples redesign their relationships so it suits both partners, improve communication and understanding for parents and children. He supports parents in reasserting their parental authority when feeling as though they have lost control of their family. Thank you, Mathew and Michael, and now I'm going to turn it over to you both.
Good morning for just a little bit longer here. Matt Meyers, marriage and family therapist, like Linda said. So I come to this work as a trained marriage and family therapist, kind of as an expert, both professionally and personally. When I go home each day, my children line up at the door, waiting for me to provide them with wisdom to enhance their lives. My wife defers to me in all arguments or disagreements because, like I said, I'm an expert in this. And so excited to be able to share my personal and professional expertise with you all today. I wish that was true. That is not true. Both Michael and I bring a lot of humility to our conversation today. Some of what we're going to be talking about is stuff that we're trying to figure out on the fly as well. How we how we work with our own kids. I got 20, 21, 18, and 14, and they've been at different developmental stages at different times in the life of technology, and so we come to this work with a lot of humility. So and playfulness too. So Michael.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Grateful to be here, you guys. As Matt said, we just come with humility. It may be interesting to just share a little bit of background. We started noticing this becoming an issue, I would say maybe about 15 years ago. And we started seeing people struggling with excessive use of technology and struggling to turn it off. And so we started seeing that. Some of the language has evolved over time. Initially, people were trying to figure out, where does this fit? Is this an addiction issue? And so we look at addiction models for trying to treat this. Is this a mental health condition? Well, there's no DSM-5 for excessive screen usage. And so we're still in a period of time of trying to work our way through it. The reality, though, is that we are seeing families that are coming to us that are having difficulty, and the symptoms that we're seeing are around excessive screen and technology use. And families, in particular parents, are struggling to know what to do. How do we navigate this? How do we help our children look at this and work our way through it? And we see this in a couple of different ways. We've seen it in areas where we have young people that we call a failure to launch. So they're 18 to 25 and are still fairly stuck in the basement, having a difficult time launching into a career or education, and parents feel paralyzed and not knowing what to do. We also see it with schools reporting that children are having excessive screen usage, and we're not able to get them to even attend school. And so we see some of these complexities show up. One of the areas of expertise that for us as an agency is that we look at these issues from a systemic lens. And so we're looking at it from this lens to understand, how does this problem emerge? How does it affect everybody in a family system? And what we have discovered is that if we can certainly work with parents on the front end to help them know and understand what's going on and build a plan with interventions that may be parent related or child related, in sort of a clear treatment process, we found that that's been very helpful. And we see families finding their way through with some success. So we bring that to you as well with this.
And so we're in an age where perhaps some of us grew up and maybe we had a remote control for the TV, and some of us grew up with access to the internet in our homes. Some of us might have grown up with smartphone devices, but wherever you're at in that in terms of when you grew up and what you had access to, the world is rapidly changing, and it has created a new developmental task for us in working with kids to help them engage with technology in ways that is that supports their relationships, supports their academic and vocational lives. And so this is a new challenge that perhaps many of us didn't our parents may not have known, understood, or even had to function in this way. So that's why what we're walking into. Linda, there's some feedback. I'm not sure if it's coming through your mic or Michael's mic. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm hearing that only with you, Matthew, and I'm wondering if it's do you have a microphone, a separate microphone you're using?
I'll switch and see if that works better.
Okay, Michael's sounding more clear, so hopefully.
Okay. So while Matt's working on that, we're talking a bit about ADHD and executive function deficits. We understand ADHD does affect young people. We're seeing numbers that are suggesting it's being identified at a higher frequency. What we're here to talk about is that we're talking about executive function deficits. And so we know that ADHD in part is about helping kids figure out how to build executive function, to plan, focus, juggle multiple things, and regulate behavior.
Yeah, so just to add on to that. Oh gosh, that's annoying. So these are some just the dimensions that we're discussing. So just so you can see, this is with somebody on the ADHD spectrum. These are areas that require us to kind of focus in and support kids.
So with these executive functions, I think it's the hope of most parents, I would perhaps say all parents, is that we would like to be able to see our kids build skills in all of these different executive functions. And for each child, they may have differing skills or abilities that they may already have, and some kids are able to rapidly develop these, and some children are needing more support in helping them to build their skills in each of these areas. And so this is something we will want to come back to because one of the things that we do talk about with parents is how do you help frame up interventions to help kids if they're struggling in some way? Can we help them see we're trying to help them build these skills that we believe are going to be helpful for them in their adult lives and relationships with others?
So when we look at areas of, yeah, you're right. I appreciate, Molly, the feedback. I'm going to see if I can figure this out. Michael, will you take this slide here?
Yeah. So when we talk about these executive functions, we see the impact show up in different places. It can show up in academic or work performance. It can see it in social relationships, the ability to organize or maintain routines, financial management, and health behaviors. And so these are areas where we can see difficulties show up. One example to share is that when my children were little, they were playing in the backyard, and I know that the family across the street had a child that had ADHD, and one of the struggles is for that young man was he had a difficult time reading the social environment, what was going on. He wasn't able to understand the cues. So there's a group of kids in the backyard playing a game of house. They had different roles and different rooms they had made with the piled leaves. And so he came in and wanted to play, and he misread the play. He didn't understand what was going on. And so as he engaged, he created disruption and frustration and anger with the other kids. And it created a really hard experience for him. And it's an example where for him, he needed me as the adult to help bring him back in and say, let me help you understand what's going on so that you could know how to enter the play and to help the kids see that we can reset this. And so often it's the adults that are playing such a significant role of trying to help our kids figure some of these things out. And it does require a greater presence for parents in supporting our children, or I would say for all adults to keep in mind what the needs of our kids are.
One of the things we want to pay close attention to is that young people can learn a strategy of avoidance, especially if like Michael talked about, if we've got kids who are not learning social cues, they're having some difficulty kind of staying engaged socially. They may use technology to lean out, whether it's video games or social media. But avoidance is a strategy for managing that discomfort, and that can be a really negative consequence because it creates a negative loop where I can't engage socially. I use technology to remediate that discomfort. In doing so, I'm less engaged with family, I'm less engaged with friends, I'm less engaged with activities, and now I've got some other larger challenges.
The last little bullet point, there's interesting stuff around this, and we have some slides on some different sort of apps and online games. There can be potential benefits to executive function development by some of the apps and online games. However, it is important that if parents are going to look at those, parents still need to maintain a leadership role to monitor how are these helping, and that there's a way to engage kids in a constructive way.
You got it. So if you think about, two sort of different attention systems, and a focus attention system, which is more like a muscle that we strengthen. It's prefrontal. It's highly involved in focusing on difficult activities that require a lot of cognitive energy. And then there's reactive attention. This is the part of our attention system that's paying attention to stimuli in our environment, looking for things that are dangerous or novel. So for kids on the ADHD spectrum, the focus attention system is already it's a deficit for all of us when we're young, but it's a more significant deficit. And so part of what they're really struggling with is that muscle is already gets very quickly fatigued. And so one of the more significant challenges for young people who fall on that spectrum is their focus attention system isn't developmentally on track with other kids their age. And so it requires a lot of focus from the adults to help them lean into building that. And if we're using technology, finding ways to help them use technology that can assist them in enhancing building that muscle. Can I take this one, Michael? Is that all right?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So technology and arousal. So the nervous system, one of the things that we're learning is about how technology can activate the nervous system. So we have our calm nervous system. I'm glad you guys aren't in person because spit just came out of my mouth and you guys would have got just showered. So I'm glad this is virtual. The video games activate our kind of our nervous, our kind of stress hormone, right? Our stress nervous system, and social media can too. And so part of why we talk about this is that for a lot of young people, they say, well, this is my calm time, this is my downtime. Well, it's actually not. And children who have who show up on the ADHD on that spectrum of ADHD diagnoses and executive functioning, they need more time in that calm and finding ways to activate that calm nervous system, right? And so technology does not help them do that. And we're not saying, don't allow them to play video games, don't allow them on social media. That's not really the message. The message more is that if that's their sole way of finding calm, it's actually not working. It's not going to help them find that parasympathetic nervous system activation. And then the other part of this too, just from a parent perspective, is when young people are engaged in devices and ignoring our leadership. I don't know if that's happened at your house. It's happened at my house. It typically sounds something like 5 more minutes, Dad. If I've heard 5 more minutes 15 times, now there's another person in the household who has a very activated sympathetic nervous system. And so it's critical how I manage that, because now we have potentially, when I go to set a boundary, we have 2 nervous systems that are highly agitated, ready for war. So part of this is to recognize when I've got a kiddo engaged and if they're not following my leadership, I got to pay close attention to what's happening inside me. That's not specific to children who show up with ADHD diagnoses or on that spectrum, but just pay attention to what's happening here, because I may show up and not be so helpful.
Matt, did you want to go any more into that fear of missing out piece?
Sure, we could. Yeah, for again, social media, the FOMO, fear of missing out. So using social media again activates that nervous system. This is a threat socially, right? If I look and see what other people are doing, that can activate that sense that I'm not a part of the group. And so that can again activate that part of the nervous system, not helping young people achieve any sense of calm. And that's critical for all of us and for young people, but particularly for young people who show up on the ADHD spectrum, that they are finding ways to find calm and calm their nervous system. Because that is a huge growth area, again, for all of us, but certainly for people who show up on that spectrum.
The only thing I would add with that is the fear of missing out is a symptom, right, of some of the struggles our kids are in the midst of. They're trying to figure out, how do I build relationships? How do I sustain them? How do I move from group to group, perhaps? And so there's this awkwardness that happens that can be amplified intensively through the use of technology on social media. And so this is another, I guess, a layer of skill set that we have to help our children with, is to know how to see the power of technology in having good connections. And so there can be healthy connections through the use of social media, and there can be ways that it can be very hurtful and affecting people. And so our kids need help knowing the ins and outs of this. It's creating a new requirement socially.
Sorry, this is you, Michael. Go ahead.
You're on a roll. Please.
We've in the physical world, we have these stopping cues, right? This kind of, we feel them physiologically. The world gives them to us. It's this end point, right? There's in a conversation, I've kind of come to the end of a conversation. The material in a class has been shared for the day. Playing basketball outside with my kid. My body, says, usually not after very long, my body says, this is really time to stop doing this, because you can't do that anymore. So our bodies give us those physiological signs. We get hungry, right? Or we get satiated, right? The physical world gives us kind of an end point. The digital world does not. And so one of the things that's really challenging for young people, especially young people who who show up on that with those ADHD symptoms, is finding a way to transition, right, from one thing to another, right, or finding a way to kind of do closure on something that is designed to keep their reactive attention system engaged. And so part of what is needed from our leadership is how do we help them, because the digital world is not designed to help them stop and transition. And so all young people, but particularly people who show up on this with this diagnosis.
It's a nice quote. Go ahead,
Matt. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's a nice quote. Computers are turning us into computers. That's part of their orientation. They can go forever, well, till they break down, but it's going to be a long time, longer than the life of a human being. And we all need to sleep. And so because of this lack of stopping points, this is the risk for kids, is that they don't know how to stop and will stay on an excessive amounts of time.
I'm going to offend some people out there. If there are people who appreciate and enjoy rice cakes, I'm going to offend you. So I just want to apologize ahead of time here. And I'll share that analogy in a moment. Sherry Turkle has done a lot of research on the implications of technology, the impact of technology on relationships. And again, Michael kind of highlighted that one of the things young people in general, but also young people who show up with these challenges, social relationships and cues can be difficult, and so the access of technology can hinder relational development. So let's think about some things that are important to relationships. To have life-giving and affirming touch, and we know that in relationships that there isn't touch, or people who don't experience human touch, their development is really hindered. And if we're engaging with a screen, we're touching something, but we're not touching another person, right? And so, and this sense of doing relationship through a screen, I might be able to find belonging. I might join some kind of online group that shares my affinity for old episodes of The Office. But I can belong, but I'm not fully known, right? Security, but no intimacy, right? So for children, part of what's happening is we've got young people that are growing up in a world in which they're eating rice cakes for their sustenance, right? It kind of provides access to relationships. Technology kind of provides access to relationships. It kind of nourishes us because we need relationships. But it's not really sustainable. It doesn't provide for all the nourishment that we need, right? And so what we as adults do is we try and convince our young people, well, stop eating that because it's no good for you. And young people are like, this is all I know. And come on, mom, I can put a little peanut butter on it and it's just fine. And we know that it's not, but we just keep trying to convince them. And so our message here is that they require our leadership, because if this is all they know, this is all they're going to seek. They need our help to help shift their diet towards something else, some other way to engage in relationships. There's a few quotes that I like from Sherry Turkle here, from one of her books, Reclaiming Conversations. She was interviewing a 14-year-old girl who was sending a note of support to a friend who had just, whose dog died or grandparent, something happened, and Sherry Turkle said, I wonder, that's not a face-to-face conversation. I wonder why you wouldn't, make this a face-to-face conversation. And the girl said, I'd never do this face-to-face. It's too emotional, right? It's too emotional. That's where relationship, intimacy, vulnerability happens. And this girl didn't see it. She was more about control, right? And so there's a deficit in understanding of what she's really needing, what would benefit her, and it's really scary. So we can't convince kids out of these behaviors, out of engaging in relationship in this way. Anything you'd add to that, Michael?
No, well, of course, there's always something I'm going to add. It's interesting because if you see that statement, it's too emotional. You get the anxiousness that this kiddo was having about having to walk into a hard conversation. And so this is a common pattern we see. It's a type of avoidance. I don't know what to do. I'm worried it's going to escalate. And so I'm going to avoid by just keeping it on a text message stream rather than going and being in person. And that's part of the problem that we're seeing, is we need to help our kids know how to step into these relationships, how to have conversations, and need practice, frankly, doing it.
I'm going to let you take this one because this was your idea to put this character in the slideshow, Michael.
I wish I could take credit for it, Matt. That's you. Norms, rules, and reading the room. Again, we talked a bit about this. ADHD and difficulty assessing group dynamics, group purpose, participant expectations. Online engagement offers a way to stay connected that isn't complicated. If I'm having difficulty understanding complex things, online gaming actually creates a fairly easy way to engage. I just got to show up and I have to play my character if it's a role-playing game, or participate in the activity. And if I can gain some skills and abilities at doing that, I'm in. I have the ability to stay in that group. And there can be light conversation around the activity. So the rules of engagement are pretty simple. And so in some ways that is a way that they're connecting. And so I want to be careful here. I'm not saying that that's necessarily a bad thing. I'm saying that if this is the only way they're engaging and learning about groups and group dynamics and social aspects, it's going to be confining for them as they enter into the world.
So these are pretty well known to us, right? So Anne, you asked about medications, treatments that we'd encourage people to converse with their physicians or a psychiatrist. Michael and I have limited training in pharmacology. We do have clients who use stimulants and non-stimulants, but we're not providers, so or prescribers. So there's not as much that we would that it would be appropriate for us to comment on. But we do know there are effective medications for helping assist with some of these things. The challenge that I could speak to is that sometimes people that echoes back. So go ahead, Michael.
So with management strategies, there certainly are evidence-based methods that can be applied. One of the things that we would have you think about is whatever those strategies that you're looking for, making sure that parents have a clear understanding of what are the ways it can help and where its limitations are. It can help in some ways, but not others. And so there's an important piece of looking at this and seeing where's the benefits and gains, and then working. Usually multiple interventions are needed. So if you're using a pharmacological intervention, there likely is a need for other support, behavioral therapies and coaching, for example. And then certainly looking at the holistic child. How are they doing? How is sleep being affected? How is nutrition? And certainly exercise is really important. Not only for ADHD children with struggle with ADHD or executive function, but all kids. That's another thing that we are seeing across the board. We're seeing children that are less active.
So how do we know it's healthy? Somebody mentioned, I don't know if it's Anne, Dawn, maybe it was Dawn, was mentioning TV programs. So a healthy digital diet looks like having boundaries, right? So traditional TV programs have a beginning and an end, although if you're streaming, it's a little different because they stream one into another. But a lot of the things that we do online do not have beginnings and ends. So a healthy digital diet, a healthy engagement for every kid, but especially for kids who are have some deficits with executive functioning, does require boundaries. And I know, Anne, you were asking about a lot about how do we do that as parents. While making sure that we keep the relationship intact. We'll go into that a little bit more here. But another thing you're looking for is there beginning to be an integration of the physical world self and the digital world? Because what you've got is what you're hoping to do is help young people be the same person everywhere. Now, a lot of what human development is about searching for identity, searching for belonging, trying out different identities. So there can be some value in utilizing the digital self to explore some of those things, but trying to make sure that I'm seeking to sort of merge, so I'm congruent everywhere, that they can self-regulate, that their digital world complements their real. It's not supplanting their in the physical world, and that we can manage anxiety without technology. Right? I need my phone, or I'm anxious without it. Right? Many of us have used our device in public to avoid engaging with somebody else. Using our cell phones to manage anxiety is not a problem unless it's our only strategy. And for young people growing up in a world that technology is ubiquitous, smartphones are ubiquitous, they're everywhere, they may not be learning other strategies. So finding ways to make sure that we're assisting them and finding other ways to diffuse anxiety than just technology. And if you think about leisure technology a little bit like a chocolate chip cookie, there's a theme here, you guys. I'm kind of getting hungry. We can't sustain ourselves on chocolate chip cookies. And believe me, I have tried. It doesn't work out well, right? So a lot of what young people are seeking to do that maybe that gets excessive and can become problematic is the dessert of technology. It's streaming shows, it's watching YouTubes and TikToks, it's doing social media, it's playing video games, it's doing those things that are leisure in small chunks, two to maybe 1 dozen, we'll say, cookies. That's okay. But beyond that, and about 10, just so you know, about 10 is the cut point. It's not good for us anymore, right? And so how do young people help establish that? They need our help. They need our help.
So it is important to figure out, how do we lead? And that is a responsibility of parents. This is again by Louis C.K. I'm not raising children. I'm raising the grown-ups they're going to be. It's a nice way to frame that. And I really like this photo. It's Mama Lion with the cubs, trying to figure out, how do I help them launch into the world?
So really, go ahead.
Go ahead, Matt.
If you distill down our function of parenting to these three domains, right? First and foremost, it's to make sure that kids are safe. That's first and foremost. That comes before everything else. Many of us are able to establish that in our homes, in our communities, in our families, in their school community. For the most part, many of us are able to help our kids establish that, or help establish that for our kids. And then the rest of parenting falls into these other two buckets, these other two domains: nurture and challenge. I love you. You're important. You belong. You matter. And I really, my job is to push you to grow. And finding the right formula, and every kid's a little different, finding the right formula of how much nurturance and how much challenge. If we over nurture and under challenge, we get kids who won't grow. They don't have to, right? If we over challenge and under nurture, they wilt under the pressure, right? So our job is to figure out what's the right formula here for hitting the mark when we're working with our kiddos.
Some people call this the Goldilocks challenge, or the three bears. Not too hot, not too cold. You're looking for just right. And this is an evolving thing. Our kids change over time. Dealing with them when they're little and they're 2 years old, there's easy boundaries we can put up. But as they get older, it gets more complex. And it's important that we understand these key functions as parents. Here's an interesting challenge example. Your child is struggling to stop screen usage and be on time for supper at 5:30. You have asked him or her several times with 15, 10, and 5 minutes warnings that it's time to stop screen use. Your child says, I'll be right up. I got this. Leave me alone. He or she finally comes up at 6 p.m. And if I could have you all raise your hands, how many have experienced this? My guess is many would put their hands up and say, yes, this is a frequent experience that we're having at home. So the way we'd like you to consider what's the challenge or skill is we want our kiddos to learn how to set and keep time limits. We're helping them to establish boundaries that they can put in for themselves. And clearly in this example, this child is not able to do it. They say they will do it, but they can't follow through. So they're very, very stuck in that situation. So how do we lead? Matt, do you want to jump in, or do you want me to just roll?
Go for it. Yep.
Okay. So here are some examples of ways to help. And the first can be feedback. And it's just naming what's going on. You are really struggling with managing your time on screens. Are you aware of how you came to supper at 6 when you said you were going to be up at 5:30? It looks like you're having a really hard time shutting off your screen to be with us at supper. So when we move into limit setting, now sometimes that feedback can be enough to help a child to be more aware and then to implement changes, okay? Sometimes kids need more than that. So limit setting, I'm going to help you with this really important skill. I'm going to shut off the internet at 5:25 each day for the next week to help you with being up for supper at 5:30. I'm hoping this will help you with this. I will turn it on at the end of the week and we can see how you do with shutting this off on your own. I know you can do this. It's really important skill for you to develop to be able to turn off screens rather than it controlling you. So the parts I'd have you take a look at with that is I'm creating structure. I'm not trying to fight them. I'm not trying to get into a power struggle with them. I'm trying to help them learn this skill. and I have a compelling reason that I could probably go into more. Why do I need you to turn this off? And I started in the last sentence. I want you to be in control rather than it controlling you.
So Jason's 14, ends up keeping him up all night. He's not engaging in his schoolwork, and then he frequently misses school. His parents are just letting him sleep in. This one hits a little close to home. This morning, I woke my 18-year-old up 3 times. And parents are excusing his absences, right? They're not sure. He does need to sleep. I want to make sure that he's sleeping. I don't want him to go to school, and then I also don't want to add to the distress of our relationship either. So some thoughts on how to add challenge back in if we've focused perhaps too much on nurturing. Acknowledging, so giving the feedback. I see that you're having a really hard time, and prioritizing your sleep. And it looks, from my vantage point, it looks like either it's in charge of you, or your school isn't as important to you as it is to me. And starting with curious questions. Have you noticed this? What have you tried to help? So we're wading in a little bit slower to challenge, because this may be uncomfortable if we haven't really walked into this with a kiddo yet. So is there support that I can provide you? And if we're not getting engagement, here's where they may need us to step in a little bit more. Here's how I'm going to support you in getting to sleep a little earlier. I am going to hold your eyelids down. Is that what that says? I can't see. Oh, sorry. Nope, that's not it. I'm no longer going to excuse these absences to support you by creating, this disincentive. That's what I'm going to do. I worry that I may be in some way participating. So I can't hear other people laughing, but Michael, I really appreciate that you are giving me some feedback that I'm still funny. Thank you for that. Thank you. Whoever did that, yes, thank you. Perfect. Now I'm feeling good again.
With this, the curious question, this is also a point to perhaps ask for clarity of, tell me what else might be happening for you. What's happened for him, this kiddo here, is school is not happening. So is it possible that something else might be happening for him? It looks like are you really struggling with school? What's going on there? Because the excessive screen use could be a strategy to avoid something really uncomfortable in school that's happening. That could be a social piece or an academic piece. And so, or it could be something else. So again, it's an opportunity to be curious with your son or daughter in that scenario.
So here's what gets in the way for us. When we're having a hard time finding that right balance, these are some things that get in the way. We blame ourselves for something that's going on with our kiddo, right? Or blame others. We see them as somehow the victim of something, and then we can get into overfunctioning if we see them the victim. Guilt, shame. I'm not a great parent. I didn't do this before. Sometimes a little hope can be a little dangerous. We see we see some initiative taken, and we back off of the boundary. A fear, right? My child's going to get angry with me. It will harm my relationship, and that can take hold too. Sympathy. It's been just a hard time finding friends at this new school. There are ways that they haven't really found their group, and I feel so bad. And then what Michael and I see a lot too is parents not on the same page. One person grew up with parents who provided access to video games, and that was how they did their childhood, and they loved it, and they turned out great. And another parent who they went to a Waldorf school and never saw a computer, and think it's from the pit of hell, right? And so we're not on the same page. We're pulling in different directions, and that makes it really hard to have a unified challenge. We undermine each other frequently when we're not aligned.
So it's important, I think, before we start putting interventions in on our kids, we have to do our own work as parents. And so here are some questions to help you just ponder. How do you manage discomfort? How have you managed it historically? That can be a wonderful teaching tool for kids, how we've managed struggles that we've experienced. How do you manage your discomfort when your child's experiencing discomfort or anxiety? That is an important question. And how do you prepare for the reaction within yourself and your family? We need to take a look at how are we as a family currently using technology? What are you doing the day that is not tech related? How are you shutting off screens from time to time? What behavioral messages are being sent about using technology by parents? And do you want that to be the message? Does that align with your family values? So when we look at families that are coming in to address technology's problems with the child, these are some of the questions that we're asking and trying to understand how is this family operating. Children are often mirroring what they're seeing with parents. So it's pretty common to see families, everybody in the waiting room, all on their phones, doing whatever they may be doing there. So, and that can happen from time to time. It sometimes can be part of a pattern. Matt?
Yeah, and then
Okay.
kind of moving into how do we meet our kid where we're at? There's this skill of attunement. Okay, attuning to where are they at? You remember when your kiddo takes their first step? Each one of them is pretty teeter-tottery, and maybe they only get one or two, and then they fall. What's the support? How many do you put? Mom or dad is only just a few steps away from them at the when they first start walking. Attune to what are they capable of? Again, you don't want to stretch too far. You don't want to stand 15 feet back if they're just learning to walk in some new skill. And you don't want to be too close because they don't have to stretch themselves. So where are they at developmentally? And what's their learning style? And then what support do they need to manage emotional regulation? So attuning what's happening for this kid. Where is this kid at? And how do I meet them where they're at and then help stretch them just a little bit?
Some kids need breadcrumbing, like I'm going to introduce little things step by step by step. And there are certainly kids that need the big picture. And if they see it, then they get it, and then they know how to deploy. Again, it's different for each child and can have diversity within a family system. Each child in a family can operate differently. The important part is we're proposing to you that if we are proactive in our approach to understanding our kids, we can have a better understanding of where they're struggling, and we can start looking at what are the skills that we want to help them to develop. And that becomes the way that we're parenting, what we're proposing to you.
So there was a question about, what are give some examples about limit setting in light of a child struggling with anxiety. So, we don't necessarily want to think of ourselves as, as the punishment, but I want to help characterize this a little differently. The skill, kiddo, is to build tolerance for this anxious distress that you're having. And so, here I want to help you by identifying, here are the steps we're going to take this week. Here is the discomfort that I'm going to assist you in stepping into. And should kiddo have either no interest or isn't ready to do that, then work with a mental health professional who can help. And you're framing it. It's kind of a boundary, right? You're framing it not as a consequence or a punish. Well, as a consequence, hey, we need more help to help you do this. Right? Our job is to help you manage this anxiousness that you're having regarding getting to school. Something's happening for you. I'm not participating in it. We've talked about a path to help you get there. But it sounds like you need more help. So framing it that way as a kind of a natural consequence of we need to get more help. So.
Yeah, I've had children, we've treated families where a child is having difficulty getting to school. There's a school avoidance. It's just, for many, it's a social anxiety. And if we can get a child to start making movements, so for example, getting a child to be in the car and we can get to the parking lot and they're really anxious, the message is, I'm so proud of you for sitting in that discomfort. We're going to figure out how to work this through. And I'm so proud of you for being in that. I know it's hard. And I'm here with you. So I'm focused on the relationship and the connection and the challenges. When we treat anxiety, we need to experience a level of discomfort and to know that we'll be in it together and it can be okay.
Yeah, that's that beautiful nurture challenge balance, right? This is what we're doing, and I love you, and I know this is really hard, and I'm really proud of you. Right. So, finding that sweet spot of drawing on both nurture and challenge. When creating some new rules around screen use for kids, start with why. Start with the big picture. What's the compelling reason? Not just we're doing this because of your bad behavior. What are the things that you want your kids to experience out of life, and have technology assist them or have them learn skills to manage so that technology doesn't take away from them? Start with that why. Your screen limits, any boundaries, come out of that why. And every time you get into a dispute with Junior about whatever the rule is, you go right back to the why. I understand why other people do this, other people do that. You don't see this as being all that useful. And as a reminder, here is why we're focused on this. So everything goes back to that compelling vision, that compelling reason that sets the framework for any screen limits, right? And then just a way of kind of naming some skills, self-management related to time, honesty, that I'm showing up with integrity, the discernment skills that I can identify. These are important skills in a digital age, that I can identify that somebody online is who they say they are. And I can identify, sites or information that might be malicious or intended to manipulate me in some way. These are important skills, right?
Yeah, if you look at those skills, you can see a lot of parallels with the executive function skills that we want for all of our kids.
Yep. One of the things to be mindful of, we see a lot of families really struggle in not knowing what are the tools to parent, reward and consequence. And one of the things that we've seen is parents defer to technology being kind of the only consequence, and it creates this cycle of kind of transactional relationships regarding technology. So I'll only do X, if you give me more screen time. Right. And so, want to be really thoughtful about engaging other ways to incentivize and disincentivize, especially if they're not really related to technology. And frankly, a lot of the boundary infractions, there's a way to characterize them very differently, that they're not really about the technology, it's about the skill. But finding different different sets of rewards and disincentives. Anything else you'd say about that, Michael?
No, I just think that's we have to build a larger array of incentives and consequences for our kids, and we want to help them build skills. So, the different types of rewards or affirmations are something we need to be thoughtful about. And if we're restricted to technology only, it's been our experience that really can handicap parents, that's the only tool they have, and that can easily become ineffective. So it's building an array of opportunities, or an array of incentives or appreciations. How do we reward behavior? So there can be material rewards, but don't underestimate the power of affirmations, and don't underestimate the quality time together, the non-technology based rewards, that you're finding ways to do a special walk, a fun activity, sharing a meal together. These are important things to integrate into the relationship work that we have with our kids.
I wouldn't add anything there.
All right. So with leadership, it's important that we have these conversations with our kids, that we're providing the guardrails in education. And this is hard, right? Leadership is the ability to be one step ahead. And that's what we're proposing, that you have a proactive approach to this, so that if you have attunement to what's going on, you have information about how technology is affecting our lives, it's on us to figure out, how do we stay a step ahead with this? And that's not always easy. However, if we have an attunement and we know what the skills are we want our kids to build, we can show them ways to do that, how to interact with technology, and how to build it independent of technology, perhaps, is the other thing that we'd want to advocate for. You don't have to be an expert, but you do need to be informed.
Yep. The trap of convenience. If we're not leading in this arena, it will lead us, right? And probably some of you guys and my household as well. We have experienced that technology then constructs the framework for how we spend time. So we want to be aware that if we've got a kiddo who is reactionary, it may require a little bit more support to prepare for the reactivity, so that we can be thoughtful in our response. But one of the things that we know, and I know this in my household too, is that accommodating sets up a situation in which kiddo is rewarded for that reactivity, right? If we accommodate, we actually end up reinforcing that reactivity.
Jonathan Haidt wrote.
Oh yeah, sorry, Michael. Go ahead.
Yeah. Jonathan Haidt wrote a wonderful book, The Anxious Generation. It's worth a read. He's suggesting, and I think we're proposing it as well, that we delay smartphone introduction until high school. And there still can be ways to have access to basic phones for communication, and this really limits social media use. This is a type of boundary or structure that adults can put into place to help our kids build the skills necessary to be able to engage with that very powerful way of engaging socially. We want to encourage our kids to be outside, to play in the real world. And we want to create clear boundaries, time boundaries, free spaces in your home, and that you're having time to connect as a family without screens.
Yep. Yeah, screen free trips. Go on a road trip when you go to baseball or softball or tennis. We're putting away our phones. You're yeah, and then talking. Helping kids with, especially as they get older, they're looking for belonging outside the family. And so, building experiences now, helping imprint on them a connection to family time, and that they can be okay as they get older with family time without screens, that they can be okay without, will help them manage some of that.
Yeah, the FOMO is a skill. We need to tell our kids about it. They need to understand it is likely for them to experience it, and we have to prepare them to know what to do and how to navigate it.
Yep. So just some, things that we use at our households. Responsibility comes before privilege. I don't know if you guys have heard this from your kids. I'm presuming I'm not the only one. Just give me, and then I'll show you that you can trust me. And so this is really that's not how relationships are built. Right? Responsibility comes before privilege. You demonstrate responsibility in this domain, and then I give trust a little bit in this domain. You demonstrate that you can handle that in this domain, and then I expand it here. One of the things that we see a lot and work with clinically is family dynamics in which parents and kiddos get into this negotiation, and it's difficult because the kiddos get the impression that they get agency, that they get decision making when we participate in this, and then it's really hard if we usurp the implicit decision making, the implicit agency that we've given them when we negotiate. There are times where it's appropriate to do that. However, when it's a behavior or a situation in which we know that this kiddo needs more help, or more support or more boundaries, right? Every device needs its own rules. Every room in the house can have its own technology rules too, right? If the phone can be the communication device, the computer can be the social media device, or the gaming, right? So each device, adding some of those, taking away some convenience for getting connected to certain digital behavior can make it less attractive. Be mindful about gifting technology, because the implicit message is that this is yours, and then you're not able to have oversight over it if that's been the message. So be really careful. I'm not saying don't, but be really careful about giving technology, and making sure that if you do a gift, make sure that it comes with the understanding that I will always have oversight, right? Help avoiding the comparison trap. Well, how come younger brother or sister gets to do, or older brother or sister, and redirect back to kiddo and their behavior. I know this looks really hard. You don't understand why this skill is so important for us that you learn right now, and it looks like he or she's got it all figured out, and that's really frustrating. So, and then just power struggles too. I'll do this if you do that. You're not going to be the boss of me. I'm not going to go to school anymore if you don't. So being mindful of those. Okay, we've covered a lot. We're we're gonna walk into some of the complexity of the digital world, related to sexual identity and kind of sexual formation for just a moment. And to take us there, Michael's going to walk us into that.
Yeah, I like that dog picture. It's awesome. So one of the realities for our kids is that pornography is a part of their experience with technology and access to it. This is a multi-billion-dollar industry that is growing rapidly. And so here are some interesting things that as parents, we have to be on top of. 15% of kids say they first saw pornography at age 10 or younger. The average age is 12. 44% have seen it intentionally, and 58% have seen it accidentally. It shows up on a link, somebody sent something, or it was seen by a friend. 71% who said they intentionally watched porn recorded viewing it in the last week. We're seeing it being that unintentional exposure could be a common experience for teens. 63% of those who said they have only seen pornography accidentally reported that they had been exposed to pornography in the past week. So this is here. Some are perceiving, 45%, that are saying, hey, this helped me have information about sex. It's almost half of our kids. 43% of teens report they have talked with a trusted adult about pornography. That to me is alarming as well. So we have lots of kids trying to figure out this basic biological function of who they are and how they're emerging into a sexual being. And this is becoming a source of education for them. They have a right to get answers. They have a right to be curious. This is their body going through this incredible transformation. And it is something that we need to be mindful of. They're learning about sex from the internet. While this may create anxiety for parents, our kids need us more than ever. We need to get more comfortable in having these conversations with our kids. And it's about helping us. What are the ways we want to educate them? What are the things we want them to know about this? If we rely just on school, a high school health class, I'm clear on this that is not enough. They're needing more help and support around this. And yeah, what would you like them to know about your values, about pornography? And the reality of the last bullet there is, if you're not teaching them about sex and healthy sexual expression, the internet will. They have that access 24/7. Matt, anything you would add on that?
No, that was too much. That was scary. That was hard stuff to talk about. I'm glad we got through. We all got through it together. We did it. I think we'll go into some other tools. Yes, there's some chatter about Jonathan Haidt's book Anxious Generation. It looks as though the state of New York is really starting to integrate many of his recommendations. And all this to say, you guys, our children need our leadership here. They won't really understand. Well, maybe they do. Some of them do really understand it, but they're not ready for it. Right? It's rice cakes. This is the only thing that sustains me. This is the way to do my life. This is the way to stay connected to my friends. This is the way to find out, who I'm supposed to become. They need our leadership, our guidance, our guardrails. The way that we frame this is so important, and they're going to fight us because that's what kids do. And so how do we lead with that delicate framework of nurture and challenge? Nurture and challenge. How much nurture is this kid needing? How much challenge? How do I articulate the skill that's needed here? Right? And how am I going to step them into some discomfort to build that skill, especially if they're not motivated? One of the questions earlier was about what if they're not motivated, right? How am I going to step them into that discomfort if they aren't motivated, right? So here are some tools. We have not vetted these, but in terms of kind of building some executive functioning, these help that focus attention system, that organizing. These are some tools that could be useful in terms of that development. Meditation, again, finding that parasympathetic nervous system, that calm. There may need to be guidance with a kid with this.
So as we look at these, we've got a few more slides on these, you guys. if you're interested in these are things that, in one of the previous slides, you have to know what these apps are, what these games are. So if you don't know what these are, it's on us as parents to do the research on these, to actually get these apps on our phones or on our computers, to engage in it, to see what it does, how it works. And ultimately, does it feel like to you as a parent, is this something that could help my child? Or would this be a way for them to not, where it would be not healthy for them? Is this just another distraction, or is this something that may not be useful? So these are the things we have to be thoughtful of as parents to know that technology can be a nice resource. However, we have to be the ones leading and understanding where it can be helpful.
So here are some others. Task management apps, time tracking apps, things that can cue them to begin to transition. Again, they have to be motivated. You get to help create ways to motivate them, right? Create disincentives for them to participate in this growth. Right? Some other ones. Again, we haven't vetted these, but you could do your own research and see. Think about the skills that your kids need. And then there may be ways to go and utilize some of these supports to help build those. So so just a few more.
Right.
Yeah.
The
Go ahead.
balance is the key here. Setting appropriate time limits and choosing options that match your specific the executive function needs that you're seeing your child need. And remember, these are secondary to physical exercise, face-to-face interaction, healthy sleep, and are foundational for executive function and development. So again, it's looking at where are each of our kids at, what are they needing, what's the executive function area we want to help them develop, and then seeing if this technology is helpful. And then watch and see, you engage and watch them and deploy it, and then see if you're getting the results you want. I know that motivation can be a difficult thing to address with kids. We certainly could talk for hours about that. Sometimes with motivation, it's trying to help them find out what are the interests, and possibly what are the benefits that you see, because sometimes that can be the motivational force. This is what I'm looking to help you create for you, that you find joy in these things in your life, and that you find a balance in these things. What do you think about that? Are those things that you might want? So motivation is a key thing to take a look at with our kids.
Jonathan Haidt, in his book, which a number of you have talked a little bit about, he highlights this as well, that if we don't have a coalition of people with shared interest in helping our kids figure out how to manage this can be extremely difficult. And so, from the time that they're young, making sure that I'm intentional about the community of parents that I'm connected to. And this begins to fall away as kids enter middle school and high school sometimes. How do we maintain those connections? Because my middle schooler is pretty clear that that no other parent, not just in our community, but in the world, is as strict as our household. He's pretty clear about that. Now, I have relationship with a number of his friends' parents, and I know that that's just his frustration, that there's a few things that we're not willing to compromise on. So how do I build a coalition? And then in doing so, can I clarify, hey, neighbors, here's how we're doing handling things. This can do two things. One, you might find out that it gives other people the courage to do the same. Two, you might find that even if they aren't, they're really supportive. hey, I didn't know you didn't like shooter games. When so and so comes over to our house and they play video games, I'll just clarify that that's not okay. We're not going to do that, right? So and now I know I have a better sense too, and they come to me and tell me, well, you're bananas. Nobody else does this like you. I know that there's that's not true. Yeah.
This can push on our own sense of anxiety that certainly our kids can have social anxiety. As parents, it can be present for us as well. And so it's perhaps a challenge to us as the adults to find the connections with the parents of the kids our kids are in relationship with. That this creates a stronger social fabric for support for all our kids.
So how to know when to get help? Okay, so if you've started with why, here's the big picture why, here's some steps we're going to take towards this. Here are some limits that you're gonna notice are going to happen for you and in our household. And as a parent, you're finding that you don't have the resources or the tools to set those limits. Reach out for support. You're getting a lot of pushback from kiddo with any change in rules or boundaries. You're not aligned as parents. I would, both Michael and I would really caution any one parent in a household from moving forward with a strategy without explicit support from the other parent. Because there's ways that you may undermine each other, and that does more damage than good. And again, children taking hostage their own well-being. I'm only gonna eat a balanced meal or go to bed at the time you want me to, or go to school if, right? And then if your kiddo's just lost, they just disappeared. They're not engaged in household. They're not engaged in friends. You're not seeing them thrive. These are times when you're at the end of the rope. Get help.
Yeah, one of the other way of perhaps looking at this is when we're having experiences of behavior from our kids that's beyond our ability to be in front of it or to lead it out. One way of thinking about it is then our children's behavior is leading our family. We are reacting to the behavior of our kids, and they can't lead themselves out of this. And so this is where we would want to support parents in figuring out how do you get back into that leadership role? How do you get one step ahead? And sometimes that takes some work or reorganization, but it can be done.
Yeah. There was a question about if a middle schooler already has a smartphone, what do you do? What do you do? And so kind of going back to with your co-parent, what are the skills that kiddo is already has? What are the things? What do we see him or her doing that is managing this well? What are the things that are missing? And then how do I articulate that? And then from that, I may get some boundaries. I may have some idea of what are the guardrails I want to put in place. But start with the assessment. What's happening? What's working? What's not working? How do we see this kiddo using this device in thoughtful, responsible ways? How do we see them using it in ways that clearly are growth areas? And then how do we articulate that? Start there. Since you're already in that, if you're already in that situation, do the assessment. What's happening? What's missing?
And then based on that assessment, you can then decide what's the structure that we need to put in place to help them figure out the mastery of this important piece of technology. And that could be saying, I think we need to help you take a break for a while, because we'd want you to do some more reflection before you jump back in. There's some things happening that aren't healthy, and we want to step back from that. or we're going to monitor it more closely. There's lots of different ways you can put structure on this to provide support for our kids.
There was a question earlier about oversight on phones, doing phone checks. I think there's that makes a lot of sense. Depending on where kid is at developmentally, it's very appropriate to do that because you're monitoring for their skill development. Are they using are they using their device to communicate in relationship affirming ways, in ways that enhances their organization? Are they using their device in ways that keeps them stuck in a loop of FOMO and depression and anxiousness? So there's ways that can be very appropriate and very helpful, especially at younger ages. And then as they get older, talking about stepping back. And that's the other piece. Be really clear that, that I am going to do this. Here's the purpose of this, right? So, yeah. See. Should I pull back and see if I can find a couple other messages or
yeah, I think so, Matt. We've got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
The one I've got here, the slide is just saying, hey, there's hope. We can get to a pretty discouraged place and just know that there are ways to get out of stuck patterns that we're in, and you don't have to be alone. That's probably one of the biggest things we worry about is families find themselves in a very difficult place with an immense amount of suffering. And so we want to help them get to a point where it's more life-giving for them as a family, and the relationships are in a healthier place.
There was a question about motivation. What if they're not motivated to pull out of online or digital behavior and really not engaged in the physical world? What do you do to help instill that motivation? So this is where identifying some boundaries that create discomfort with with some of the ways they have been using technology as an avoidance, right? So the skill might be, I want to help you build some ways to connect with people that you maybe are unfamiliar with or don't know, connect in your community, your school community or in our neighborhood. And so here are some parameters that we're going to have in our household to help create space for you to experience that if and when you're ready, right? So you're scaling back maybe access, creating the discomfort, not characterizing it as a punishment, and so it will either create motivation because they may get sick and tired of being bored, which would be the hope, or it activates some other something else that might be a part of why they were avoiding. Maybe there's a deeper social anxiety or depressive symptomology, and now that comes to the surface, and then therapists can help sort that out and work with that. So.
Matt, I think, from what you and I have seen, a large majority of the kids that we see that are struggling with excessive technology use have an underlying mental health factor that's in play. And that can be autism spectrum, ADHD, depression or anxiety, or perhaps all the above. And so in many cases, the excessive use is an attempt to cope with the struggles that they're experiencing. And that's where it can hijack them because they don't see a different way to manage it. And so the more we can learn about why they're stuck in this pattern, the more we can see and help them see ways out of that struggle.
Well, did we outlast everybody? Is there anybody left in the session here, Linda?
everybody disappear? We got everybody.
There's still quite a few people who hung in there with us, and I'm just so grateful for you both. Thank you. I think you covered most in the chat, and I'm curious if you have resources to share for staying more tech savvy in our kids to help keep them safe, proper blocks on their devices. Can you share that?
Yeah. So it's really about the why. Why do we put blocks on access to certain technologies? And that is about, I'm putting this in place because it's a way to help you. It's a structural way to help you learn how to shut this off or to balance this. The skill is I want you to know how to have the ability to turn it off. So this artificial structure is to help give you a sense of what it's like to have it on and off. I also want you to have boundaries around this, which ties into the on and off. So it's really about creating the compelling reason of why we're putting this structure in. And what do we need to do? What does this child need to do to have less structure? Might be to say, I need to see that you know how to manage this on your own before we pull that structure away. And that's going to take some time. That's something that I'm not going to see probably in a day. We're talking probably a bit longer. Maybe when you're 14 or 15, that might adjust that, but we'll see. It's really about helping you, kiddo, with your abilities to manage this. That's what I want for you. I want you to be able to manage and walk into this, that you got this. You know how technology can be in your life, and you know how to live life without it. That's what I want for you.
That framing is so important, that this is about, I want these things for you. I want you to be able to manage a smartphone device. I want you to be able to play video games with your friends. And I know that there's some skills that you got to have to be able to do that really well, that supports you in those relationships, in your academic, vocational, occupational life. And so these are things I want to help you get shored up, so that this can be really life-giving when you do have access to it. That framing is so important.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that. I'm guessing that everybody recognized how amazing Matthew and Michael are, and there are more ways to engage with them. Thankfully, they'll be back at Groves in person for some parent events next fall. We're hoping you can check those out on our website later this summer for that information and registration. They also have some amazing information on their website, and we encourage you to reach out to them via that and check out their website for those resources. Thank you, everybody, for attending. The presentation will be shared with you via email in the next few days and also posted on our website. We encourage you to share this and other information with your family and friends. They're such a great resource, and it's amazing and a privilege to be in this village with everybody and serving our community. We just hope that you enjoy the rest of your day and hope to see you at another event.
Thanks, everybody. Good to be with you today.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.